You're listening to the Build to Rent podcast. Build to Rent podcast.
Welcome to the Build to Rent show. Steve Olson here along with Sherrod Zanger and Chase Levitt. Episode 2 of Season 2. We know you've been awaiting it eagerly, and we're here to talk about some more good stuff that we've been experiencing in the world of Build to Rent properties today. How's it going, guys?
Good.
Good. Really good.
It's good?
Yeah.
Would you ever say that it was not good on a podcast?
Yeah, if I was having a really, really crappy day, I probably would. But no, I'd probably keep it real.
If I wasn't good, I probably wouldn't be in here.
Okay.
I got to feel good, be in a good mood, you know. I try to, if I wasn't feeling good or crappy, I'd just push it off another day, right?
I won't quote it exactly, but I remember the move Liar, Liar, where Jim Carrey has to tell the truth, and the judge asks her, "How are we this morning?" And he's quite honest about his previous night.
That is a good movie.
And everybody, yeah, that's what's great. Or he's going up the steps to the courthouse, and a homeless guy says, "Got any change?" And he's like, "Yes."
You try to say I was lying to everybody?
Well, that's the point is, yeah, you're on the show. You're good enough to say you're good.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Fabulous. Today's a great day.
Yeah.
It's Halloween.
It is Halloween today. We did not dress up.
Chase was actually telling me he was
although I
bummed.
wanted to.
Yeah. Well, I could be a witch. I've got a hat.
That'd be funny, like just all dressed up.
Okay, next year. Next year we'll dress up.
I'm dressed up like a middle-aged real estate investor. I got my Travis Matthew polo shirt on.
I'm dressed up like a biker mom. I've got leather pants on and a black top.
Stylish.
Chase, what are you? A golfer?
Yeah, I'm a golfer.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Adidas shirt on. And
What are your kids for Halloween?
so they like to switch it up a little bit, but my 6-year-old was a little minion. But he was a blow-up one. You couldn't even see him inside, so it was funny.
It's cute.
And then my 2-year-old was Victor from Despicable Me. Victor's the orange guy with the...
Vector.
Vector.
The guy that says, "Oh, yeah." That was my ringtone for
Vector.
a while. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we had a Halloween party on Saturday. He actually wore the wig, dark wig,
Nice.
glasses. Pretty funny.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's
And
very
Olson's kids went back to the 80s.
good. Yeah, my 8-year-old boy is Larry Bird, and he is pulling it off.
Hey, did he dress up on Friday or is that today?
That's today.
Okay. And you got pictures of that
He's
yet?
walking around school with his feathered hair and his blonde fake mustache and
Oh, I can't wait.
really tight Celtics jersey and shorts. Yeah, he's doing pretty good. And then my other boy is Rocky Balboa, and he's intense. You know, he's only 7, and I do worry he's gonna try to like knock somebody out.
Someone's going to say something, and he's going to be like, "Let's go."
Yeah.
Meet you at the flagpole.
Yeah, kind
Part
of.
of the
Or
character.
at the top of the stairs.
Yeah. He had his first basketball game on Saturday. He's intense.
Nice.
Like a kid blocked his shot, and he took it very personal.
Oh.
Yeah, we're gonna have to work on that. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah, Sherrod's kids are out of the house, so now she's just more worried about what they don't do on Halloween.
Yeah. Trying to keep him out of trouble. I've already had a few parties. I don't like when Halloween's over the weekend and there's a handful of parties, so it's like I'm tracking them all the time, seeing
Yeah.
where they're at, making sure they're safe.
Monday, Halloween, lame.
Yeah. But I'm excited. I like to go see what all the kids dress up as. So
It's fun.
So here's a topic we wanted to talk about, and I think we've kind of tipped our hand as to how we feel about this before. But the question is, when it comes to real estate, is COVID over? You guys were joking that I have COVID. I have a little bit of a raspy respiratory voice right now. It's not COVID, Gavin. Okay. Gavin's our sound guy. But, so it's out there still. But for real estate purposes, have we just kind of moved on? Or are there residual effects? What do you think?
I think people think there's still COVID lingering on. I think where I see the biggest issue that's still COVID related is supply chains.
How so?
Well, because I think people have seen prices decrease, right? Builders slow down a little bit on what they're doing. There's a little more labor available. But people keep saying, well, you've got to keep dropping prices. Well, the truth is that the supply chains, we're still having a shortage. I mean, we still, in our project in Greenway, they're still waiting for electrical panels. As I remember it correctly, I could be off on how many weeks, but they ordered those like 48 or 58 weeks ago. That's insane.
Or
We
more-
still
yeah,
don't have...
a year in advance. And
we still
not
don't
there.
have electrical panels. My husband owns a footing and foundation excavation company. There's certain pipe that they have to pre-order ahead of time and hope that it comes in time. So there's still some supply chains that it's still affecting. And I know people think that it's not and everything's gone away, but as far as supply chains, I think that it still is hurting us.
So the perception of the retail investor is, oh, this whole run-up is over. Builders are going to have to slash their prices now. Not that simple.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then you look at gas, for example, right? So all of these subcontractors are having to pay for employees, or like my husband who uses machinery, they're using gas and fuel every single day. Yeah. And those prices are still really high. So people want them to reduce their price. Well, how can they reduce their price when some of their expenses...
Just driving to the job site, running that excavator costs a lot of money still.
100%.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, not to mention all the stuff that petroleum, the product, goes into.
Yeah,
right?
Petroleum-based products.
Right? It's in like everything. Yeah. Interesting.
We read an article, I sent it to Chase a little while ago. I guess, was it Micron or Intel is going up into to Boise, doing a $15 billion project up there. And then there was another one to do manufactured chips, right? Because again, we've relied on overseas for that.
Well, we like that for our rental product up there.
1,000%.
Yeah.
But then there's another plant in Arizona somewhere, and I think that they
Taiwan Semiconductor.
Yep,
yeah,
there
they're
you go.
doing one. Yeah.
So I mean, I think that that's been helpful. A product of COVID that has been a positive thing.
Bring some of these supplies into the States,
where we can have a little more control of it.
I'm having a meeting with my partners on the, and I've mentioned this on the show, the deal I'm doing in Indiana, and we think that's an interesting deal. And what I'm really thinking about is investors are going to look at that and rates and this whole compared to what, is this a good deal? I think it'll be a pretty good deal. There's a property tax abatement that we're getting over 5 years, and the whole pitch is, while this interest rate nonsense plays out, you get a big break in property taxes. But still, even with that being the case, we're just worried about everything, availability of materials and costs. We're having a meeting tomorrow, and we're going to discuss, should we just like do a 90-day pause? Finish out our engineering, get this plat recorded, but see, because we're not into the land very much. We're lucky we can afford to sit. But I don't know. It's very, very difficult. And then talk about this thing that's happening with HVAC equipment.
Okay, well, pause really quick before you go there.
Pause.
Because on that same track, I think we're still having supply shortages, but I think labor is going to start to shift. So we're going to have more subcontractors that are going to have a labor base. So things could technically speed up in a sense.
Depending on the market that you're in. Yeah.
Exactly.
Labor is a local thing.
I think that labor, that could be a positive, especially with what's happened recently in the climate.
So I think that we talked about the construction stand of things. We talked about, the question was COVID, where's it at? Is it still in effect? And so my mind thinks about two different things. You think about the construction standpoint, and then you think about the purchase, right? So if we go back to 2020 when things were a little bit crazy in a different aspect with COVID when it hit, February, March, things were on pause from a purchase standpoint, I would say for about 1 to 2 months. We've talked about this, right? Mm-hmm. Remember when things kind of came to a halt?
You just couldn't do anything.
Yeah. So from a purchase standpoint, 2020, springtime, pause. Then after that, when people figured it out a little bit and investors still want to buy, builders still want to build, things have been gangbusters up until about this point from a construction standpoint. And I still think it is gangbusters where builders are building. They might have backed off a little bit and they're looking and trying to understand where things are going, but they still have stuff that they've ordered in contracts in play that they're going to finish out, spec homes to be built and projects to get finished out, right? And so you talk about COVID from a construction standpoint, which I think is great, where that's why we're seeing these shortages with labor and supplies. The first thing that's going to start to switch around, which we've seen, is the labor. And then supplies, it'll be interesting to see what happens next year.
Labor's already switching a little bit.
Yeah, and that's why you're saying from your Indiana deal where you're pausing, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to see that soften a little bit. And now we got the purchase side of things with COVID hitting where things were crazy, and now things have switched. It's not so much the COVID anymore. It's the interest rates, which we've talked about, that took a turn on us
That's
And
the new COVID.
That's what's changed things a little bit,
always
starting the summer and the fall. So I don't know, I just want to throw that in there. When you think about the COVID, I think my mind goes to two places: a construction standpoint and then a purchase standpoint.
Yeah, well, because I just finished a book called $1 Trillion Triage. They talked about how the Fed reacted to COVID. And it was make sure there's more than enough money for everything under the sun, right? And that money was just out there everywhere, crazy. And that's inflation. I mean, a lot of people, and they were right, said you can't just release trillions of dollars into the economy and not have inflation, right? So maybe for another podcast, but I remember laughing when they were saying, nah, it's temporary inflation. And it seems they were pretty late to the party on that because we were all experiencing it in real life. I just tried to buy airline tickets. Nobody feels bad for this problem I'm about to complain about, but take my family to the Caribbean during Christmas. It was ludicrous. I know that's usually the most expensive time. This was far beyond, way outside of the galaxy of normal Christmas time expensive travel, right? For the crappiest coach seat, $1,900,
Jeez
to Punta Cana from Salt Lake City.
You have to pucker on that. And I mean, that's a family of 6. So
Yeah, so we used
So where
all
are you
the
going
miles.
now? Oh, you use miles, okay.
All the
I was
miles.
just saying, you change and say, never mind, we're going to stay
When
locally.
inflation's really high, you get more miles because
Yeah.
everything costs more.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's how I'll choose to look at it instead of complain. So, okay,
So now go to your 2023 HVAC.
So what we've been hearing, I had a meeting with our builder last week. So there's a project that we're working on where it feels like, man, it's expensive, but it's not expensive. Historically, compared to what we do, it is. When you look at like product, it's still probably $50,000 a door at least, cheaper.
50 to 75.
But then interest rates make that a lot more muddy. And we're just kind of going, hey, we're hearing a lot from investors. Are you going to lower the price on this? And we're like, I get why you're asking that. Maybe we should. And so I meet with the builder, and they're just kind of looking at me blankly going, well, I'm not getting that from the suppliers. You know, these material suppliers, they're going to pull every knob or pull every lever and turn every knob and once they have a bunch of materials left and no buyers and they demand everything else, then they bring the price down. And we are just simply not to that point yet. I don't know if we will get to that point in a very big, meaningful way. Maybe we will, because, a lot of this problem, do you hear about all this nonsense about these factories shutting down? They had, due to a bunch of fires up in British Columbia, the lumber mills. Some of those are coming back online now. But so many of these manufacturers are just having a hard time with labor. You think about that unemployment rate right now. When you're at the drive-thru getting your food and you see hiring at $17 an hour, and why is this taking so long? And why do they get my order wrong every single time? It's a product of really, really low unemployment, right? Because they have to pay a bunch of money to idiots because those are the only ones left to hire, right? So there's some good that comes from unemployment ticking up a little bit, right? Now instead of, there's all these jokes going around about millennials, not showing up for work and you got to pay me a bunch of money to, I better show up for work and I better do a good job. That gets experienced on the manufacturer level too, and they're dealing with it.
So I'm looking forward to that. I want to see things soften, or I want to see people's services become a little sharper, a little bit better. I think that's good all around. I think we've had it pretty good over the last couple of years where things have gotten a little bit sloppy. And speaking from a builder standpoint, I wouldn't want to be a builder right now because they're trying to play that juggling act where things haven't softened, but they probably would like to soften or bring things down a little bit from a purchase price standpoint, because they also know that the cap rate's not really making the interest rate's not making the cap or the cash flow look very appealing.
And sometimes it is what it is, right? They purchase the dirt, and you purchase that so long in advance, and then other improvements along the way cost money. And so we're kind of in this weird little mix, especially with one of the projects that we have here in Utah, where some of it was done when the market was rocking and rolling and now stuff's starting to slow down a little bit, how does that look? What do you do?
Yeah.
And we really don't know what to do. And the builder's saying, I can't do anything. There's nothing. It is what it is. The cost is what it is.
Well, that's what we talked about on the last episode, this stupid price discovery phase. People say, oh, interest rates don't play with prices. It's a function of demand. I'm watching it happen right now.
Firsthand.
Yeah. So you can say that's not a thing, but we're watching the thing happen right now.
So price discovery is just more than just the end purchase price. Maybe it's also prices to build
it's all of it.
To build it.
Well, think about it. And this is, we're talking about the main market, the Intermountain West, Western U.S. I think this is probably the case in some southern markets too. The places that had really big COVID booms. We're getting price discovery all over the place. When you take the transactions and grind them to a halt, I mean, I hear economists on CNBC, oh yeah, we're seeing home sales really slow down. They're down 22%. I'm going, where'd you get that? Because where I am, it's like 90. Mm-hmm. Right? Anytime you slow transactions down that much, obviously the market's not efficient. It's not operating. It doesn't know what to do.
I don't know how some of these banks and credit unions are staying in business right now.
But markets will vary a little bit. Like you said, Texas is a little bit different. So we're in Texas, but also Idaho, Utah, Arizona. Those are 3 hot states that have just been nuts, crazy. And so we might see it swing the other way is what I've been reading and seeing.
And I think some of that is, Texas, what we've experienced is there's not a huge appreciation in Texas, right? You purchase a property, there's some appreciation. That property tax there keeps that appreciation down because people don't want their property to be worth a lot more because then their property taxes are through the roof even more than they already are, which, is kind of a blessing and a curse because you look at, like you said, Idaho, Arizona, and Utah, and we shot through the roof, and now people are having to have a reality check, and it's coming back down. If you didn't jump in when it was hot, and then it was funny. I saw a little, those spirit costumes going around.
Like a million
I've
of
sent
them.
a handful of them out myself because they're kind of funny. But
were they appropriate?
Most of them were. Some of them were not appropriate. But it was funny because it was like saying a 2022 home seller, and it was saying getting information from their friend who sold in 2021 or their friend that sold 6 months ago, right? And so it's that whole thing of just because something sold for something 6 months ago, that doesn't mean that that's what the new normal is. The new normal is less than what it was before. And I think some people that's going to be hard for them.
Whenever I go on a trip with my wife, we love to go check out real estate. We went down to Dallas in August and found ourselves cruising up around on the north side of the metro, a couple cities. I might be butchering how it's pronounced, Salina or maybe Salina, and Prosper, Texas. These are all up on the north side of Frisco. You feel like you're about to Oklahoma when you go there. Tons of new communities being built by all the big new home builders. Everything was new. And I've been seeing data that in the DFW metro, that's where the haircut's happening. So even with high property taxes, Texas isn't completely immune, but they're not going to be Vegas.
Yeah.
They're not going to be Phoenix, where we work a lot too. We'll have to see. Because it's, I mentioned on the last podcast, Invitation Home just raised a couple $2 billion. I think this price discovery is happening, but there's a cash floor here somewhere because there's a lot of money that is looking for the deal. And eventually we get to that and that money starts coming in. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, a lot of people get really mad about investors taking over the housing market, and what's happening right now probably leads to more of that.
Yeah, they got frustrated, right? And even a lot of home builders were like, we're not letting investors buy into our properties. And now I'm sure they're
in some cases
have to backtrack.
They're going to be the only ones that can buy the properties. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll have to see. So we heard too, I met with the builder, and that's a big tangent, by the way. And I would add, as long as we're talking about tangents, good move on lowering the AC in the studio, Chase.
It's kicking on now.
Oh, this is
Jared over there, like probably cold, but
it was pretty hot in here 20 minutes ago. Yeah. Okay.
5 or 10 minutes, it might be a little brisky, but
yeah, I think it's headed that way. But okay, so we're talking about these material increases, and it's no secret, and everybody listening to this show, it's been in national news. Lumber has come way down, right? And people, okay, we got to start coming up. But the problem is, it's still a lot higher than before all this nonsense started, even though it's come way down. That's how high it went. I think they were talking $1,700 a foot or something like that, or per 100 board feet rather of lumber. And now we're down in the 4s or 5s. And historically it's, a 3s kind of a number. But what's interesting though, we'll have to see how this plays out. And this is boring stuff that gets talked about on calls with builders and HVAC national suppliers and stuff. There are new standards being mandated by the federal government. I don't have all the details yet. Maybe we can post a link to it. That are going to eliminate the ability to use much of this entry-level HVAC product for environmental reasons. So builders that were doing entry-level homes and using, basic furnace and water heater package and all that kind of stuff, or build to rent, right? I mean, most build to rent people aren't putting a Lennox furnace, all right, in their units. They're putting an entry level. That's just not going to exist anymore. So those builders are now forced to trade up a couple of notches. The good news is the tenants, the buyers, get a better HVAC product.
Which, let me stop you there. So this is what an article from ACHeatingConnect.com says. All regions, north, south, and southwest, will increase by the equivalent of 1 SEER in 2023, which will result in a lower amount of electricity used for the same amount of cooling. The north will see an increase from 13 to 14 SEER, and the south and southwest will increase from 14 to 15 SEER. So it's going to be a savings, right? But right now, I think it's creating a little bit of an issue.
Well, it's a savings in electricity.
Electricity for a tenant.
Yes.
Or for a homeowner.
But not for the builder.
Nope. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a kick in the teeth. Again, we're going to go back to a supply issue.
Yeah, because now you have all those builders that were using the entry-level product rushing into mid-range product. And you can't tell me that based on what we've seen over this COVID nonsense, that these manufacturers are going to be able to just flip a switch and ramp up.
They don't have a bunch of them just sitting
right.
around waiting for somebody to purchase them, right?
That's going to cause a glut. That's going to cause disruptions in supply chain, right? That's going to cause delays. So, I mean, this is choppy water that we're functioning in this interest rate environment, in this supply chain environment, high petroleum prices. It's pretty crazy. I've seen headlines that we've got like 25 days worth of diesel left in the United States right now. And that's going to skyrocket the price of diesel this winter. What do you think those excavators run on, right? Mm-hmm. Those dozers and all that equipment on construction sites. So should materials come down? Yeah, they should, but we don't have a healthy supply chain still.
No.
It's nonsense. I think probably the worst supply chain story I've heard is our one in Arizona with those stupid electrical panels.
Is that not insane? Like literally, I'm going to go back and look at our notes here. So we had put a note, I had put a note on our little spreadsheet as of 10/11. So October 11th, they had said that they had been on back order for 56 weeks. So they ordered them 56 weeks ago as of October 11th.
56 weeks.
And it's hard for the builder because
that's all they're waiting
from an
on.
investor. That's why we need to update our clients, which we've tried to. But from an investor standpoint, whether it's our builder or someone else, it's good to understand or have that communication open what's going on. Because if you can understand or listen to who's ever building your property, the builder, and get some feedback of what these delays are, because there's some serious delays we've been talking about, legit delays. Builders not just sitting around, right? They want to get it completed and moved on.
Yeah.
Well, they want to get their final draw, and they want to be done with that project, right? That's just stuff hanging over their head. So,
well, the builder we work with, for the most part, has penalties in their contract. They go over the 12 months, and that's what stinks for the investor right now on a lot of this product we're working with on build to rent. And sometimes we get too specific into we try to keep it general on the show here, but when we say is COVID over, not in a great way.
We're not getting sick.
I didn't wear a mask on an airplane last week. Mm-hmm. And so I think in some ways it's over. But for these investors, guess what's over? Really good interest rates. Guess what's not over? Delays and logistics that are dragging out your final refi, and you don't have that 4% rate saving you anymore.
No.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, you're going to have to take this tone of I'm going to refi and it's going to stink for a while. I got to wait for rates to come down.
Well, and people keep asking, hey, can we lock? Can we lock? Well, yeah, if you want to pay extension fees, because again, we're waiting on supply chains and we don't know when that's going to be. So our lender Lane's been, and his team have been awesome to just say, hey, we're just going to wait till we get C of O and then we'll talk rates then. And people don't like that, but the alternative is you're going to pay even thousands and thousands of more dollars to relock your rate.
It's kind of been hard for us. It's made us look a little bit stupid because the builder will say, hey, it's going to be finished during this time. And to cover his tracks, that's what he's thinking. But there's these delays from supply chains that he's just estimating, saying, this is what we were told. And then it gets pushed back another week. And the next thing you know, it's a couple months. And so we just try to keep our investors updated, but we definitely have to hedge. Just know that there's delays.
I think we should, on our next episode, talk about is COVID over, but let's talk about the market and management and leasing and that kind of stuff. There's plenty to say there. I'd like to give one little thing I learned, if you don't mind, and this affects the three of us. The three of us are partners on a build for rent deal here in Utah. That's not our traditional sell it off to individual investors. It's I wouldn't call it a syndication, but it's a partnership because our investors are overseas. And it's 76 townhomes. And one way to hedge against this risk in your financial models, something that we learned has been pretty cool, that was introduced to us by our overseas partners, is called an interest rate swap or an interest rate cap. In this kind of environment with delays and everything and rising rates, your worry is, I've got a construction loan on this build for rent deal. And you guys know, and everybody knows, that a construction loan is a floating rate. So you close your construction loan at prime +1, and that thing can go up and up and up, and all these prepaid interest reserves, which you typically have to prepay them, right? In this case, we've got like $800,000 in prepaid interest reserves in this deal. It actually can start going away pretty quick, right? So we sourced through Chatham Financial Advisors an interest rate swap product, and I talked to some of my buddies that have done this before, and it was going to be like $350,000 to buy this product on the full principal amount of our loan, that if rates went above a certain percentage, the provider of the interest rate swap, in this case it was Wells Fargo, would pay the difference. So what you're just hedging. You're saying, I'm willing to give up this premium payment so that I know that if rates go above this point, it's not my problem. And we kind of met halfway. I talked to a guy that said, we buy an interest rate swap on half of our principal. Because, you worry if rates kind of stop or they come down, you still get to take advantage of that, but you flush that entire premium down the toilet. So we bought it on half of our principal amount. And I was doing the books the other day. I didn't tell you this. I hired a bookkeeper for the project.
Oh, awesome.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
she's doing all that. But I'm getting her set up on all that, and got all these deposits from Wells Fargo, $6,000, $7,000 coming in because the rate went so far above where we were that it's been an excellent hedge. So this doesn't work on smaller deals. Typically, you want to see loan amounts of at least a few $1 million, and you're going to have to pay the broker, somebody like Chatham Financial, a brokerage fee of usually $5,000 or $6,000, but they can go out and they can source that, and then you can protect yourself from that floating interest rate exposure. I don't have a good way you can do it with builders and supply chains, but all that translates to money. So this is one way to mitigate that. So something we learned.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Okay, let's wrap it up and go trick or treat, do all that kind of fun stuff, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Build to Rent Show. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Build to Rent podcast. You are now just a few clicks away from joining our community of Build to Rent investors. All you have to do is follow our show on Facebook, LinkedIn, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. You can also watch this episode and more by subscribing to the Build to Rent podcast on YouTube. The information presented in this podcast is general in nature. Nothing in this presentation should be construed as financial advice or recommendations for any particular situation. The hosts are only licensed to provide advice and services in the states where they are specifically licensed, and listeners should seek the advice from an appropriately licensed professional in the area where they invest. The examples presented in this presentation are for illustration only, and no guarantee that similar results can be achieved, since the facts, circumstances, and participants are all different.